Hello and welcome back to Engage and Empower Me, a patient engagement design course here at Stanford School of Medicine. My name is Dr. Kyra Bobinet, and my course co-director, Dr. Larry Chu, and I welcome you. Dr. Larry Chu is an assistant professor of anesthesia here at Stanford, as well as the founder, executive director of Stanford MedX. Tonight we have a e-patient moderator, Nicole Estinol, and she is a 24-year-old international studies student at CSU Long Beach here, and she has had juvenile rheumatoid arthritis, which she has been successfully managing, and we're very excited to have her here with us tonight. That's it.
If you are joining us for the first time, a quick reminder that there's a simultaneous conversation happening on Twitter right now using the hashtag MedX. Nikki Estinol is the in-class moderator for today's program and will be taking questions from social media. So please, make sure to start up your Twitter client to join in the online conversation and interact with today's speakers. Just as a reminder, call for abstracts and presenters is now open for Stanford MedX 2014. Don't miss your chance to present at the premier patient-centered conference on emerging technology and medicine. Applications for speakers and presenters are now open until March 1st, 2014. For more information, go to medicinx.stanford.edu and apply today. Please also make sure to like us on our Facebook page at www.facebook.com/StanfordMedX. Please note, you are watching a live online program, and there is a delay between real-time events and the live stream you are watching. Tweets from our in-class guests will appear before you see the real-time events they are tweeting about unfold on the live stream video. If you're enjoying this class, please join us again next quarter for Design for Health, a new class from the Stanford University School of Medicine on applying design innovation to improve healthcare. This course is brought to you by Stanford MedX, and weekly programs begin April 3rd, 2014. Dr. Larry Chu and Dr. Kyra Bobinet will serve as co-directors of this new course.
Hi everyone, my name is Nikki Estinol. I'm 24 years old and was 17 when I was diagnosed with juvenile rheumatoid arthritis. JRA is an autoimmune disease that affects the joints, immune system, and organs. My favorite definition is not your grandmother's arthritis. There is chronic pain, there's stiffness, there's inflammation, and generally just not so much fun stuff to do. JRA, it has no cure, but it can be treated as well as managed. When I heard treated and managed from my rheumatologist, my interpretation was, all right, okay, treated, treatable. Mom, you're a nurse, you got this. Just tell me what I need to do, and tell me what I need to do to start feeling better, and I'll do it, and I'll just be here in the meantime, hanging out with my friends. Thanks, Mom, bye. And I went on through high school, receiving early aggressive treatment. Initially, after my diagnosis, I lost a lot of weight. I experienced a lot of fatigue, but with biologic injections, chemotherapy, and steroids, I had my RA under control, and I was back in the game, hanging out with my friends, extracurricular activities, and going to school. But then I lost my insurance. I was unable to access quality specialty care. I grew up fast, and I realized that I wasn't in pediatrics anymore, and my parents didn't have all the answers. Now, I could go into detail about my struggle and the denial, the pain, the constant depression, the severed relationships. Everybody has their stories. But what I want to focus on today with you guys is what patient engagement means to me. When I talk about patient engagement, I'm not talking about becoming this brilliant, all-knowing disease advocate. It's what I mean when I say patient engagement is it's about you and your story, your health, your preferences, how you react to your treatment and what you deserve as a patient. It's about paving your own path and not having to always have to follow the path that's been provided for you. What I mean by that is there are steps provided to you from, say, your doctor's office for managing your care. There's exercise, support groups, and medication. But for me, I wasn't interested in the typical support group that my doctor's office had offered. I know my rheumatologist could tell me things about tracking my disease, and she was great at listening, working with me, and very scientific stuff. But me as a 21-year-old and coming off my teenage years, there were some really important questions that I had to ask that I didn't feel like I could go to for her. Go to. And those questions for me were, how do I make high heels more JRA friendly at the club? What are other experiences that other people have had on so-and-so medication, but they want to go to a bar with their friends to drink? How can I survive Coachella with my chronic pain? And how should I decorate my wheelchair? How do I resist binging on Oreos while on prednisone? And that's where patient engagement helped me. I decided to go down another path and kind of seek out resources that fit me. Rather than relying on my doctor recommendations for groups, I proactively searched for my own. Shout out to My Immune System Hates Me, which is my support group on Facebook. And what I like about that is I don't have to go there every week and kind of get acclimated to all the people there. It's an easier way for me to connect socially and at any time and with people my age who can connect with me on social issues or say something that a young adult would worry about and not something that I can necessarily talk to my doctor to. That bit of engaging myself led me to people like me who offered the empathy and understanding that healthcare may sometimes lack. And that's what I mean when I say be engaged and pave your own path. Connect on social media, blog about it, know about your condition and how you react, and educate yourself on everything out there. Find the answers where you can. Utilize the professional patient that you are. Engagement allows empowerment. It's being comfortable in your own skin and not being scared of talking to others or being scared of approaching your doctor because you feel like they might judge you. It's about your health, and you know that you've researched enough and you're confident in where you stand from being engaged that you know yourself best and you don't have to be scared anymore. And that's what I have for you guys today. Thank you. And we are also very lucky to have two speakers with us tonight. The first is Devin Gross, the Chief Executive Officer at Emmy Solutions. As CEO, Devin pushes Emmy Solutions forward, creating an atmosphere of innovation, collaboration, and client service. He's responsible for the company's vision, nationwide operations, and overall success. Devin is a longtime leader in patient empowerment. He has spent 15 years making patient-centered care a reality. And Henry Albrecht founded Limeade in 2006 and has led the company from an idea in his basement to a high-growth SaaS employee engagement company. Before earning his MBA from Kellogg School of Management, Henry dribbled the basketball in Europe and used his love of statistics and technology to hustle through product and marketing roles at companies such as Intuit. But before we hear from them, before we hear from these great speakers, a quick word from Stanford MedX.
Time to take another shout out on Twitter. If you are following this conversation online or on Twitter, join the discussion using the MedX hashtag. If you are just joining us, we have with us today Devin Gross and Henry Albrecht speaking on the topic of using triggers for behavior change, along with ePatient speaker and moderator Nikki Estinol. ePatients and caregivers out there, what questions do you have for our speakers today? What might you like to ask Devin Gross or Henry Albrecht about using triggers for behavior change? Healthcare providers, technologists, and researchers out there, what are the real-world problems you are facing that you think might be addressed through a better use of leveraging triggers for behavior change? Tweet us your questions or responses, and we'll do our best to have them addressed during this class at the Stanford University School of Medicine. Engage and Empower Me for Thursday, February 27th, 2014.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me today. Thrilled to be here. I'm going to talk about triggers, behavioral change, and interactive patient education. Before we start, I want everybody, both here in the room and those online, to imagine you're in a physician's office right now. You're either by yourself or you're with a loved one. You're talking to your doctor and you've just been given a diagnosis of chronic kidney failure. And everyone think how they feel. What are you thinking right now? What did I just hear? Failure, disease, sick. You're scared. There's a lot going through your mind, whether it's you or whether it's a loved one. For those of you here and those of you online, look at the piece of paper. Look at the piece of paper online here. This is what you're given to describe your disease. This is what was considered patient engagement not too long ago. This is what people were sent home with. This is how you're instructed to manage yourself going forward. So why am I here today? What we do, ME Solutions, we've been around for 12 years, and we exist for a fundamental belief that people, patients, employees, consumers, are the most underutilized resource in the healthcare system. They want to be more involved, and historically, they haven't been given the tools to do so. And what we do at ME is we develop technology-based solutions that help engage and empower people to take a more active role in their care. And to do that, we have to give people information in ways they can understand, they know what to do with, and they can ultimately act upon it and really take control of their care. So I'm going to show you an example now of, this is a clip from one of our programs that talks about chronic kidney disease.
Think of it like this. Imagine your kidneys are a spaghetti strainer. The strainer should let water out and keep the spaghetti in, right? Well, with CKD, some of the holes in the strainer, these are the nephrons, are too big. So some of the spaghetti gets out. In addition, some of the holes get clogged, so water, this would be any waste, can get trapped in the strainer. Obviously, not getting rid of waste isn't a good thing, but there are things you can do that will help. I'll get to that, but first, let's look at what causes CKD.
So a quick example, what did we just do there? Voice, image, and text. Everyone's got different ways of learning. How do we reinforce those learning modalities? How do I talk about a condition using things that are very relevant to you? Spaghetti strainers, fruits and vegetables and coins, and other things that are familiar. And how do we give you information that in a way that you can really respond to and react to? How do we give you information in a way that you can go home and share it with a loved one or others in your circle of care? So what do we do? One of the things that's key is this concept of a girlfriend-to-girlfriend conversation. What you heard earlier was when your doctor talks to you and they want to talk about the clinical information. What we found is in reality, what patients care about, what the families care about, it's not where I'm going to make the incision necessarily. It's when can I drive again? When can I play golf again? When can I dance again? When can I drink again? And I'll tell you a great example. We talk to patients when we build everything that we do. And we went to build a program that discussed putting an access port in for women. And we went to talk to patients and said that already had the access port and said, what did you want to know that your doctor didn't tell you about? And they didn't talk about the clinical indications. What they talked about is the access port's often put underneath the bra strap. And what the women wanted to know, or what they wished they were told before they showed up for the appointment, was to wear either your favorite bra or your widest strap possible so that the port could be put outside of that, right? So again, how do we engage people? How do we empower people? We have to talk to them in a way they understand, friend to friend, girlfriend to girlfriend. So the next key piece of this, in my presentation, the title is about triggers. One of the things that ME does that's very unique is we're a prescriptive experience. So you can't come to a website and just get it. It is prescribed to you by a clinician, and I use clinician as broadly as possible. It could be a nurse, it could be your doctor, it could be a pre-op area, it could be your care coordinator, it could be somebody. But they are prescribing this information at the right time, at the right place for you to get that, so where it's most meaningful to you, and you're going to want to engage with it. And then we document and track that on the back end. So we know, did you consume it? If you consumed it, we work with our clients to measure, are we actually getting the behavior change that we want? Are you following up with your appointments? Are you more satisfied with your care? Are you participating in your care more? So those triggers are critical, and our platform gives us the ability to do so. So again, it's all about the action. I'm going to play you another clip right now, and this one is preparing people for a colonoscopy. And I'm just going to play a small clip. One of the things that you're supposed to do prior to a colonoscopy, you're supposed to follow a lot of prep instructions. One of the prep instructions is that you shouldn't drink wet fluids because it makes it hard to read the colonoscopy. So what you're going to see is, how do we tell someone that? And then also pay attention, we tell people why. There's lots of things in healthcare where a clinician or a doctor or somebody is telling you to do something, but they leave out the why. And if I leave out the why, I'm less inclined to do so. So let's take a look at this clip.
And Jell-O. For example, he may want you to avoid things that are red, like cranberry juice, purple, or blue, like sports drinks. So be sure to ask, why is that? Well, in your colon, red can look like blood and make it hard for the doctor to tell what's what in there. And you don't want him to miss anything important.
So if we do that, can we change behavior? Can we drive an action? Can we drive change? These are quotes from real patients that went through our program. I'll be sure not to have anything purple or red before a colonoscopy. Avoidance of red and purple foods prior to my colonoscopy. I'll be sure not to eat anything red prior to the colonoscopy. Very simple things improve the experience for both the patient as well as the clinicians. And let's talk about the improvement for the clinicians. We took that program, and you just saw a clip of it. The whole program takes about 12 minutes. And we did a randomized control study with Dartmouth. And 52 patients at Dartmouth got print material very similar to what's sitting in front of you today, or what I showed on the initial screen. And 52 patients got an ME program preparing them for colorectal screening, for colonoscopy. And what were the findings? 11% of patients said they were more knowledgeable about their procedure. 14% or 18% required less sedation medication. Now, why is that? Because they felt more comfortable. They were less nervous. Right? As a result, there was a 14% reduction in turnaround time in the room for colorectal screening. So when we look at, can we engage people? If we engage them at the right time, patients are going to be more satisfied, but the providers in the healthcare system are going to have better outcomes, and we're going to begin reducing costs. So there's a win across the board for everybody here. We've been at this for 12 years. We've engaged over 7 million people. And we engage, this year alone, we'll engage close to 3 million people with what we do. At the end of our programs, we can get comments back from patients, and we get quotes back. We have hundreds of thousands of these comments and quotes that I look at all the time. What I look for are when patients or when people say, I can, I will, I am going to do something, because then we start to get some personalization, we start to get some self-actualization. And that's all about giving people the information they need, how they want it, where they want it, and how they consume it at the right time. So let's just look at some of these quotes. Right on the money, I did cancel my surgery and I'm continuing with physical therapy. My condition is improving. Frankly, I'm now considering a non-surgical solution to my knee problem. Thanks to Emmy, now I'm a little hesitant to get my procedure done. We're not trying to dissuade people from surgery. We want people to do what's right for them according to their values and preferences. For them to make that decision, they need to get the information that's relevant to them. They need to understand it in an unbiased way, how they can consume it and actually make a decision. And that's what Emmy does. And that's what we hope to keep doing, changing the quality of healthcare, one interaction at a time. Look forward to answering questions during the panel conversation.
Go? All right. Exciting. Thank you very much. Hard act to follow with Devin, Kyra, Nikki. Awesome job. Good story. My name's Henry Albrecht. I'm the CEO of Limeade. Really thrilled to be here. I applied to Stanford as an undergrad. As it turns out, I decided to go to a different college. Turns out having a 2.9 something GPA doesn't get you into Stanford. But for my mom, who's I'm sure following the tweets religiously, I'm giving a speech at Stanford. I mean, that's pretty cool, right, Mom? She'd at least be happy about that. Actually, I overheard some people talking as they were walking by. I think they were medical students, and they said, you know, I kind of like these social sciences people. They might not be as smart, but I feel like they haven't been brainwashed as much, and they have some really good ideas. So I'm hoping today I can provide a liberal arts perspective on this healthcare thing. I had a separate speech prepared called The 10 Things Wrong with Healthcare, but that felt a little negative, and actually that was off topic anyway. So I think there's a little clicker. Okay, so what's Limeade? Very briefly, Limeade is an employer-facing health and wellness and productivity-focused company. We have a theory that the employer, the workplace, is, if not the best, one of the best places to do healthcare. And I'll get into a little bit about why. There are companies like ours, they call them wellness companies sometimes, who basically help people become aware of things, take action, and improve. Action may include something they track, like steps on their device. It may include them going to the physician immediately because of some condition. So we cover the full spectrum end to end, and we serve about 100 customers, about 1 million end users, and we're based in Seattle, Washington. Enough about the company. I don't know where I'm supposed to point this. Okay. So why is the employer the best place to do healthcare? If you think about healthcare, there's the bottom of the funnel where you're having a procedure done. This is where most of the money is made. But then there's the other parts of healthcare, the top of the funnel, where people are just walking around, maybe a little bit overweight or stressed out or all of the above, or maybe they smoke and other things. So we tend to focus a little bit more on the top of the funnel. And so when we work with a workplace, which actually has people at every level of the funnel, it's important to speak a language that's relevant to them. Just like to Nikki, as a teenager, she wants someone to speak to her in that relevant language. I spoke to someone before the class who's in the VA. A veteran might have a totally different context that you need to speak with them, and maybe depending on which war they're coming out of it, or how old they are. So there's always a context. It turns out the workplace is a great place to do context. You can imagine a retailer that sells fruity drinks might want a set of preventive plans that tie into their culture with the starting strawberry, moving mango, and accomplished acai levels of this game called wellness. But you might want to have a slightly more conservative viewpoint for a timber company based in the South. So having that relevance matters, the cultural relevance, but also the financial relevance. There might be rewards in here. Here it's tied to their insurance premium. That are actually very important to the company. So a reward could be $500 off your insurance. It might also be, and one of our large healthcare clients who has a lot of nurses stressed out, not particularly high paid, doing home health care, they actually found it extremely compelling to be able to win a year of free housekeeping as an incentive. And we'll talk about some of these behavioral triggers and how you can use rewards to be more strategic. And then lastly, strategic. It may be that we're serving a hospital who really cares about having people seek healthcare in their own facility for competitive reasons. They don't want people who are diabetic and have hypertension to go across the street to their competition to have them treated when they feel, perhaps quite rightly, that they do a better job and they want the revenue and the cost savings in-house. So relevance is a very important way to trigger behavior change. Next, I'll skip two, is being social. You heard Nikki talk about her Facebook friends. You've got CEOs with big egos who want to challenge their division heads to participate in competitions. You've got people like one of our clients here who are getting together every morning just to get together and greet each other and maybe do a plank and do some push-ups or something like that. I remember hearing Dr. Christakis from Harvard give a speech about the Framingham Health Study, about how people even if you didn't know someone, if you were obese or a smoker or drank a lot, and your friend's friend is actually more likely to be one of those things, even if they've never met you, even if they're not in your immediate social connection. And that really, that kind of hammered home, God, this workplace, I might not know this CEO, or I might not know that nurse in that other hospital, but I know someone who knows them, and the norms are set, and they're, quite frankly, things at work that we don't even understand, but we know that social matters in behavior change. And we see this in things like champion networks, where you have a large hospital with champions going around and talking to their friends and encourage them to do something a little bit different. And sometimes it's very subtle, like, hey, we're going out to get lunch. What do you want to get? And then there's that pause, even though you kind of want to go to In-N-Out. You're like, yeah, Subway's close. Should we go there? Salad? There's that subtle pressure when it becomes social. Obviously, the family is where a lot of healthcare is done and is a social unit as well. Just the sheer number of touch points, too. This is the last, I'll try not to hammer the workplace thing, but if you think about, I was trained as a marketer in MBA school. If you want someone to buy a pair of jeans, you kind of have to hit them from different angles. They have to see it in retail on the shelf. It has to look good and feel good. They have to be aware that there's a sale. There's a lot of things going on, and healthcare is the same way. If you hit people from enough angles enough times, those touch points have a cumulative effect. And where do you see the most people? At work. Most people are there 8, 10, 12 hours a day, and that's where most of their social, just the math alone, that's where most of their social interactions happen. There are also things like mandates, incentives, and rules that have to be followed at work that don't necessarily exist in the world of consumer stuff. I had to throw this just because we're at Stanford. You guys, I'm sure, are all aware of Professor Fogg's work here. I just want to give credit. I don't see the trademark on here, but this is his work. This is just about taking a very small step. He would say, if you want to have good dental health, floss one tooth. Start with one. There's some small steps you can start with. Think about like keeping one appointment. A lot of healthcare costs are tied up in post-surgical care. Did you just go to Walgreens and get your first prescription filled? It turns out a lot of people don't. They just want to go home. Do one step. Just stop at the CVS on the way home and buy a pack of smokes and your meds. Oh, actually, you can't get those at CVS anymore. Over time, you learn skills and mastery and all that stuff. I won't give his speech. The next thing is meet people where they are. It turns out that we actually are largely a software company. We build all kinds of cool software. We integrate all these cool devices. We have social challenges. We do our best to make an engaging social technology experience. But we also serve a lot of hospitals, and nurses and physicians aren't sitting in front of their computer all day. In fact, most of our clients are large, distributed, non-white collar workforces. And to reach them, you may need paper. You may need some compelling videos from Emmy. You certainly need accessibility. You might need people on the phone, people in the doctor's office. You actually need all of these things. And then people can select the channel that they want to do. Have you ever been in one of those weird arguments with a friend where they say, oh my God, I hate going to the mall? And you're thinking to yourself, I love going to the mall. That's weird. Oh, I buy everything online. I haven't been in the mall in years. And some people just love it. And that's fine. You have to allow for choice if you want to get people engaged in some of these things. Let's keep going. So I wanted to have a lot of text on this slide, so you definitely wouldn't read it. But I wanted to call attention to some of these. In medicine, it's often, psychology is like the coursework you take when you don't get into med school, maybe. I took Psych 101, so I feel good about that. But you can use some of these biases to good effect, and you have to be careful how you use them. You might get a different outcome, and you could test this. If you say, wouldn't it be awesome if you could be alive at your son's graduation? Versus, you could miss your son's graduation if you don't treat this. You might actually see a very different response rate. Now, I'm not sure which one you'd see, but that's the kind of thing I would test if I were a physician or a hospital or something like that. Geometric discounting is one we use a lot because we manage these incentive programs for employee wellness. Think about giving someone $20 on the spot to do something. Hey, we're giving out $20 bills versus you're going to see $4 per paycheck for the next year. First of all, people don't even see their paychecks anymore. That could cost the company, let's say there's, every other week, 26 paychecks, just over $100. You could actually get much more bang for the buck for $20 than for $100. So think about some of these Psych 101 biases when you're thinking about healthcare decisions. Think of healthcare as a game. Think of we call it more population engagement or wellness or population health management. But there are so many game elements that can be applied here. Games are, if it's just a compliance exercise, we need you to do these tasks, that's actually okay. I mean, it'd be great if everybody got all their preventive screening and were aware of their health risks. I was actually really happy to be engaged in a biometric assessment the other day, and I found out that actually I had high cholesterol. And so as someone in their 40s with high cholesterol who had a dad who had a pretty major heart attack in his early 50s, that's good information to know. I'm not shunning that. But over time, if you don't feel like you're in some sort of voluntary activity, eventually you'll give up. And so have a goal, have a set of rules, have a feedback system, have feedback loops. Even something like the little Fitbit device I'm wearing on my wrist, in and of itself, that's just a feedback device, and it's a game. It's a fantastic thing. And so if a physician can think about, this is our coaching dashboard here, if a physician or some sort of medical practitioner can think of prescribing game-like things. Hey, I'd like to prescribe this device to you, and I don't want to see you again until I see 100,000 steps on there. But I also want to see you in 10 days. Or, some sort of weird challenge that seems like a game, that could actually be quite useful in certain contexts. We're not the ultimate game designer, by the way. I think I have the next slide about this, but I am going to show you one game. So this is Karen. Karen was 56, had a knee replacement, really had trouble walking, and was on blood pressure meds. So she decided, following BJ Fogg's advice, I'm going to take the stairs once. And as it turns out, taking the stairs for her was a big deal. A, because of her knee pain. B, she wasn't in real good shape and she was overweight. C, her work was on the 7th floor of this building. This is the view from the office near her desk. This is actually a building company in between here and the airport. And just by taking the steps, this is what happened. She didn't have surgery. She didn't get meds. In fact, she got off of her meds. So by thinking about it as a game, by taking that first step, something stuck. And maybe it was that little awkward moment where I was like, so are we going to lunch? Or are we walking? Or can we take the elevator? I'm sure you can cheat every now and then. But and the reward was not that big. And I don't know what an iPod Touch costs, but it's probably $50 or something. Someone in the room might know. I don't want to alienate Apple, but I went off. So the other thing is keep your game fresh. The way we try to keep our game fresh is by having the game designer be in the company. Remember I talked about cultural specificity. We want the game designer to actually know of what they speak. So we do some marketing techniques and contextual inquiry and research into what people are doing, but we really want the designer to be within the company or even within the division of the company and say, what would work for this manufacturing group? What would work for these nurses? What would work for these other subsets? So we don't actually necessarily try to build the game. We get scared sometimes about building that cool Angry Birds or SimCity or whatever it is. If you try to make health that kind of a game, I would worry that maybe people would get bored of it after a while. So we kind of want to build the game platform and then have the people who really understand the workforce build the game. And that way they can launch a new challenge every month, every day, every quarter. They can challenge their peers. Maybe the game is designed by just you and the people you think can't keep up with you when you walk around the building. So keeping it fresh is critical. Treat the whole person. I won't go into the depths of well-being science, but there's so much richness in concepts like resilience and optimism and self-efficacy, which we call belief in your abilities in our program, and concern for others, and gratitude. And there's so much richness in the connections between these things. Actually, that's kind of the origin of the company. I used to work at Intuit, and they kind of bring all your financial things together and then present a picture of your financial well-being, and then they tell you how to improve it. We try to do the same thing, only with your overall well-being. And so I mentioned earlier, my father had a heart attack when he was 52. He's still alive and doing great at 81 now. And I think about what caused that. I guess the proximate cause was something in his heart clogged up an artery, but what really caused it was probably a lot of work, a lot of stress, a lot of travel, rich restaurant food, 4 very annoying and competitive boys to raise and fund and pay for college for and all that stuff. So the cause was actually what I would call well-being, and it's interconnected family life, work, health, food, stress thing. The medical system probably just thought it was that blocked artery thing. So we tend to treat the whole person. And then I think about what has allowed him to live another 30 years. And to me, that's the things like resilience, autonomy, the ability to make and keep commitments to a course of action. Even though actually a lot of the diets they put them on back then, they would never put them on now because science has advanced a little bit. It'd be nice to have some big buildings like this focused on behavioral science. Haven't seen those yet. Lastly, think like a digital marketer. So, oh my gosh, did I put a Seahawks thing up here in the Bay Area? Oh, God, mistake. Anyway, the point here is within this ad actually came up online. I think this was Macy's, and this is Gap. Within 2 minutes of the end of the Super Bowl, they had a targeted, relevant communication. And I think to myself, what if within 2 minutes of getting that diagnosis that Devin talked about earlier, you got something right then and there that was immediate? So that immediacy was great. And it was really segmented and targeted and positioned. All this marketing stuff, this kind of MBA stuff is really useful. Think about, some of the things we talked about with discounting. What if you saw that? What if you actually knew what a procedure cost in the first place? And then you could get that whole sale mentality about a procedure. So we'll solve that price transparency thing one of these days, and then we'll have discounts. I'm not going to show the video, but essentially this is one of our other large university clients. And it's basically someone smiling and talking about, it kind of became a game, and I'm not sure why I got into it, but I just wanted the points. And then my friends started doing it too, because they wanted points too. So it's where healthcare and population health meets a game that you get something really, really powerful. And this is up on our website at Limeade. You can check it out later, but I thought the panel might be good. So thank you. Shall I turn this off?
Thank you to our speakers. We're now going to have a Q&A session. It's going to be simultaneously here and on Twitter with the hashtag MedX, which I'll be working with Kim Vlasnik. But we can now take some questions from the audience.
Hi, that's a fun talk. What's your advice in dealing with the depressions of the first prognosis, bad prognosis?
So the question,
turns?
yeah, sure. The question was, what's your advice if depression's part of the initial diagnosis? Is that right? From our perspective, and one of the things I talked about a little bit is what's critical in the care process is just not the patient, but the circle of care. So your spouse or children or other family members, and I think it's very important to talk to the patient that you're not alone in this. Other people feel this way, and to talk to the circle of care as well of this individual is not alone and what needs to be done and how do you have those conversations. We actually develop a lot of tools. People with chronic conditions, people that have a surgical event have depression as as a component or a secondary component of that. And I think making people understand what it is, they're not alone, and what can be done.
Yeah, I'd just try to add on to that about depression. First of all, strangely enough, employers actually have a double motivation with depression, because depression is so highly correlated with productivity and job performance and attendance challenges, that even though that sounds kind of callous, it's actually kind of a nice reinforcing thing, that they care about it for a different reason. The first thing is, I'm not a physician, so I would say absolutely speak to a professional about it. There's so much stigma about psychiatry and psychology, but I'm not sure why, but there is. Speak about it. And then, I think I would just say the subset is treat the whole person. It would be hard not to be depressed with a diagnosis, and I think Nikki showed us some of the things you would get out of CBT or some of the depression treatments are exactly what she showed with exercise and positivity, social engagement. You did a good job.
We have another question from the audience.
Hi. So I was curious, and anyone can respond to this, but it seems like if a person goes in, gets a diagnosis, it feels like suddenly giving them a bunch of information is sort of like initiating them into a tribe that they didn't want to be in. And I'm wondering, when you guys do this research into sort of how to lead people into like being a part of this community, what are things you pay attention to? How do you soften that? How do you make them feel like they're choosing to be a part of this in some way rather than sort of having it all just thrown on them?
I guess I'll talk. I think it's a funnel, right? That's how we view it. You may not see it that way, Devin, but we focused really almost exclusively at that top end of the funnel, where we're trying to create those tribes in the workplace of friends, of coworkers. Once they get down into what I would call the diagnosis, we want them to know that tribe is still out there, eating well and exercising and getting their preventive care. That other tribe, just all their friends and coworkers, I think one of the big problems is people feel like, oh, now I'm a disease and I've got this big red letter on my chest that's diabetes or whatever it is. They still want to be a part of that original tribe. They just want to be a regular person. I think you could probably answer a little bit better how tribes form, in the clinical world, or maybe you could. I don't know.
I think it's a great question. One of the things that we try to do is, historically what's been done is a clinician tells you you have disease X, and here's how I'm going to treat you, right? And you're going to be treated, but you're not necessarily happy about it. You're not happy about the condition. One of the things that we've spent a lot of time doing is how do we talk to other people that I'll say are already part of the tribe? And what do the other people in the tribe have to say? I'll give a quick example, and this isn't necessarily disease, but quitting smoking. There's no shortage of smoking cessation programs out there in the market. We put a program together, we showed it to a focus group. The focus group said this is awful. It wasn't done by a smoker, they don't understand my conditions, they think it's really easy, right? We tore it up, we started over, we had, the voice of Emmy that you guys heard was this beautiful voice, we made it a little raspy, we did things, so how do you feel part of the tribe, and how do you feel that someone's talking that really understands? And I think it makes it easier, but it's not easy, it's hard.
I'm a nurse here at Stanford, and I work tomorrow. So what is your take-home messages that you would like me to take to my coworkers and patients?
That's a good question. She asked she's a nurse, and she asked for some advice as to what to relay to her coworkers from basically what we're talking about. Relating back to engagement and what I said about my social group on Facebook was that a lot of the times I can get the empathy regarding my arthritis from them, because sometimes when you go into the doctor's office, it's a 10-second session and you have no time and they just want to treat you. And I mean, it's understandable, but my advice would be to just try to connect with the patients, like on a person-to-person level. It's like, yeah, you're a patient, but you're still a person. And And I don't want to have to go outside of the healthcare world to get empathy. I want to be able to be comfortable with a nurse, with a assistant, with a doctor. And there are a lot of nurses out there. My mom's a nurse, and she was really good at connecting with people. So I think whatever makes it easier for the patient in terms of being like less scared to approach you about something, or simple conversation, that would be my thing.
I would just say, what's routine for you is not routine for your patients. So you see the same thing every day, and it's second nature to you. And when they hear whatever it is, whatever floor you're on, it's new, it's scary, and remembering that connection and that bond.
I would go ask your coworkers and the people you hang out with, hey, is there any one thing you want to change about yourself? And if you hear 2 or 3 or 4 people say the same thing and you kind of feel like you could improve that about yourself, I'd challenge them and say, do you think we could do that for 2 months? That would be the one thing. In a hospital setting, one thing that I thought was kind of fun recently that one of our large health system clients did is nurses have a really hard job. It's super high stress. They're on their feet all day, and they see really emotionally damaging stuff all day long. And so sometimes the patients' families bring in stuff to them, like, thank you so much. I know it was hard to see, what you did was so important. Here's some donuts. So here's one really easy thing you can do. It does happen, by the way, is fold a little card and say, thank you for the gifts of healthy food. We're working on it just like you. That probably could make a difference. Maybe you'll just get fewer donuts in and you won't feel obliged to eat them because these nice people brought them in.
Make it edible.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, or no, go ahead. You can.
Thank you for such a great talk. 2 questions for you. One is, how do you reach out and retain these people, retain these patients, retain the people who are trying to make these changes? And secondly, what are the biggest blocks you have seen in behavior change that you are still struggling with in your company?
Go for it.
How do you keep people engaged? So there's this weird relationship between engagement and relevance that we're really interested in. We're doing a lot of this, that marketing analytics thing, we're really doing that with data. We have tons of data on hundreds of thousands of people and what they're doing and who gets better and who doesn't. So we're mining that data the same way a marketer would mine data on who buys jeans and who doesn't buy jeans. So we've got some PhDs kind of thinking through that. I don't think we have all the answer, but we think there's something really interesting about the more local, the more relevant, the more it feels like it's of the DNA of that group, the more engaging it is year round. We're also just testing, did the words in this social challenge work better than the words in this? Which device is better than the other? But I would call it's less about knowing what the silver bullet is, which is what the medical world seems to be built on, and it's more thinking about it as a process, an iterative process, a testing process, an improvement process. And then there's a second part, but we'll get to that in a minute.
Yeah, a great question, and we spend every single day in our company discussing this exact topic. So a great question. A couple things. One, the way we try to engage, as I talked about, it's a prescriptive experience from your clinicians. So it's this extension, whether it's a nurse, a physician, whoever, and there is a meaning to that. The second is we look at multimodal communication. So who's flown Southwest Airlines? And those online can raise your hand as well. But if you fly Southwest and after you book your ticket, Southwest will then say, if there's a problem, how do you want to be communicated with? Do you want a phone call? Do you want a text message? Do you want an email? Do you want to talk to a human being? So they're beginning to capture preference. Right? In healthcare, that hasn't happened much. We said, here's how we're going to communicate with you, and here's when we're going to communicate with you. I think if we begin to capture preference, we understand that, and we tailor messages that way. Excuse me, it makes a difference and we keep people engaged. And we've added all of those modalities to what we do over time for that reason.
And the hardest thing, I was just thinking, the hardest thing you asked, what's the hardest thing in your own company? To me, the hardest thing is the blend between top down and bottom up, but between telling people what to do and between people having intrinsic motivation. And you always want to find that sweet spot where you kind of want to do it and they kind of want you to do it. That's really hard to do. And so even that happens in our own company. I want to tell people, as the boss, some stuff I think is important. But I know in my head that if I just tell all the time, you lose people right away. That balance is everywhere in medicine and in healthcare, the tell versus voluntary, and you really have to watch it closely and balance it. We have very compliance-driven programs that get massive compliance and low voluntary engagement. But if you only get voluntary engagement, then you only get the fitness freaks, which isn't what helps. Anyway, you got to find that blend.
I just wanted to say we would like to recognize some of those people who are joining us on Twitter tonight. Jamie Church, Abby Gopez, Annette McKinnon, Meredith Gold, Emily Bradley, and Philip Jeffrey. We're glad you're here. And also hello to Erin Gilmer, Dr. Kira Babinet, and Sherry Reynolds. Thank you for joining us. And to also build off your question about how to retain patients, we have a really good question from Twitter to Devin from med student Julian Hinson. So we're talking about retaining patients, but he's asking more of how to, here's the question. How can we deliver this audiovisual platform to patients far removed from the digital world that doctors inhibit in low resource areas?
Yep, I think that's another great question, and probably the second biggest topic that we talk about in our office all the time. You have to look at your community and you have to look at where you're delivering. So is prescribing interactive programs that are going to be accessible on a computer, on a phone, right for everybody? No. So are there opportunities in the care setting? You know, there are patient education centers. There are other ways to deliver that I might not have them do it at home. I might have them do it when they're there. We look at other modalities. You know, one of the reasons we move things to a mobile device is people that may not have a computer have a smartphone. Or not even a smartphone, but just a phone. And can we trigger them with a text message or a phone call? Can we print it up and hand it to them? If it's a senior who's not used to going online, encourage them to share it with their child or their spouse or others that are going to help in that care setting. So I think you have to look at the different situations and figure out how we touch them. But one of the things that I tell people is you don't want to build to the lowest common denominator. You want to set the bar high and keep building to that high bar.
We have a question in the audience.
Hi, thank you for all three of you for talking today. So my question is, doctors have very little time with their patients. So if a doctor has 1 or 2 minutes to do some type of counseling with the patient, what is the number one thing that, from all of your different perspectives, would advise that doctor, how would you advise that doctor to use their time in order to encourage behavioral change?
That really gets to me because I'm not a healthcare guy, so it feels like one of those unnatural constraints. So the doctor doesn't have enough time to deal with their patient, is what you're saying. So they have to see 80 patients. Part of me is just like, okay, let's reinvent that structure because that doesn't make any sense. So the entrepreneur in me is like, okay, great, you only have 5 minutes with someone and they have depression and they have high blood pressure and they've got renal failure. Okay, let's solve this I would rather rethink that constraint problem. And I think there's a lot of cool companies you probably talk to who are trying to do that with rethinking primary care and putting near-site physicians and all that stuff. So I would just say my short answer is that seems like a structural problem. I might have some tips too, but I'm not a physician. That's a structural issue.
I'm not a physician, but an issue that we deal with a lot, right? So I think the numbers are on average, clinicians have about 18 minutes of a consult and patients talk somewhere between 30 and 60 seconds of that 18-minute consult, right? So a minute or two. So, what we talk about often is, it's this concept of the $5 question versus the $100 question. And what clinicians are more satisfied doing is when they can answer the $100 question. So I'm having knee replacement, I'm diabetic, and I need to be back in work in a week because I only get a week off, right? How do we take that, what I want to say, the road or the mechanical conversation out of that clinic time, and how do we let the learning occur in another environment so that clinic patient time becomes a coaching moment? And there's lots of ways to do it, but I think that's critical.
Wouldn't it be nice if a physician thought of a patient as a customer? That might sound wrong early on, but not a person, not a patient, but a customer. Like, I went to the Ritz-Carlton once for a conference. It was totally awesome. I didn't stay there. I stayed down the road at a cheaper place. But I walked in. We were about to go swimming in the pool, and they knew my name. I didn't have a name tag on. For some reason, I don't know how, they knew my name. They knew where my friend was, and they guided me to him. It was so awesome, and I was like, oh. And then I remember the last time I saw my physician, and like, I get way better treatment at the mechanic's office than I get there. So I was like, God, wouldn't it be great if healthcare could think of me as a customer and think of me as needing information and valuing my input. And you know, it's not to denigrate this awesome profession that saved the life of everyone in my family, including me. It's just to say, I think there's awesome room for improvement.
Oh, well, I just wanted to speak on that really quickly. I know I don't have exactly a lot of answers for the doctor, but except to listen to the patient, because like I was saying, it's not going to be all on the doctor. It's not also going to be all on you. So for the doctor to listen to the patient, and then from there, the patient has to take the responsibility. I know I only have 2 minutes. What are my main concerns? And a good example is I saw a new rheumatologist, and going off the suggestion from Dr. Joel Najkaldi, who was at MedX last year, he told me to come in, bring 3 things, like my top 3 goals, and like that's how you're going to use your time efficiently. So I went in there, and I didn't know it was going to be a 45-minute session, like introductory, but I treated it like 2 minutes. I was like, oh, well, hi, here you go. And then I just handed her my paper, and it had 1, what I want to do, 2, what I want to do, 3, what I want to do. And she was quite surprised that I had a plan laid out and it used our time efficiently, because she was able to see what I wanted without me being like stuttering on my words at the doctor's office. It was already prepared. She was able to see what I wanted quickly and devise a plan based on what my goals and her goals. So, yes.
So you talked about how you talk to a lot of patients and do a lot of focus groups about how to design that conversation. And I was wondering whether you do the same type of research with the clinicians. Like, what has your experience been in terms of working with the clinicians in terms of prescribing these types of interventions, or I guess you would call it that. And have you had a struggle with that in terms of like embedding it into their workflow or getting them to prescribe these things?
That's a fantastic question. So the question was, we use patient focus groups on the content. How do we get it into the clinician workflow, and is there pushback from the clinicians? And yes, there is pushback from the clinicians, right? So what we've learned over the years is, 1, it has to be easy. So how do we get it into their workflow? So how do we get it into the electronic medical record? How do we make it a seamless process? So things that we focus on. You know, the other key point is that we hear is we're not trying to make, well, our position, we're not building a clinical pathway for a hospital or a patient, and we're not trying to replace the conversation between the patient and the clinician. If we've replaced the conversation, we've actually done a disservice. So how do we keep it at a way that we can get the key points across? And it goes back to my comment earlier, that how do we make it, the learning occur outside that setting, and it becomes a coaching moment for them to have the parts of the conversation that are very, very relevant and meaningful.
Okay, and we have our last question over here.
Thank you all to be here. I just kind of follow up with your description of how to be a patient, and I think it's a vicious circle, because we as a patients, if we don't come prepared to the physicians, you know, we are not given the opportunity to take advantage of how we feel, what we know, especially with this new technology. Even children are more aware than the grandpa. You see that? So one of the things that I suggest to my patients is that I'm a physiotherapist, is that, hey, before you see me, come with your problems on one side, blue in blue, and let's get in red the solutions. And you just present it like you say, back in paper, right away, and it takes a lot of, listen, sometimes the parents don't even know what the kid is talking about it. And I think it's more and more training that we have to do as a patient, how to train a patient to be a patient. Thank you.
Oh, she was speaking about how it's difficult for the time constraints between doctors and patients, and we also kind of going what I also said was training the patient how to be a patient so that both parties are ready to interact in an efficient and timely manner, and both parties are able to listen to each other and collaborate. Quick shout out from Twitter. Thanks for joining the discussion. David Goldsmith, Jason Koo, Henry Min, Ninian, Justin Mitchell, and Jewel at It's Just a Bad Day. And thank you again to our speakers for joining us. And thank you all for joining us as well.
Thanks so much for joining us tonight for this class on using triggers for behavior change with Devin Gross and Henry Albrecht, and guest moderator Nikki Estinol. Please also remember to join us next week, Thursday, March 6th, with guest speakers Chris Hogg, Ernesto Ramirez, and Rick Valencia, who will speak on the topic of self-tracking and patient engagement. Stanford MedX e-patient advisor Hugo Campos will give the opening Ignite talk and moderate the discussion. Call for abstracts and presenters is now open for Stanford MedX 2014. Don't miss your chance to present at the premier patient-centered conference on emerging technology in medicine. Applications for speakers and presenters are now open until March 1st, 2014. For more information, go to medicinx.stanford.edu and apply today. On behalf of Stanford MedX, the Stanford AIM Lab, class faculty, myself, Dr. Larry Chu, and Dr. Kyra Babinet, thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you next week.